I meet so many entrepreneurs, especially since we've been on Shark Tank and people call us or talk to us because they want to be on Shark Tank and they think they have a product. They think they have a service. They think they have something valuable. I say, have you gotten money from strangers to prove it yet?
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest on this episode is Steve Sashen. He is the founder, creator, visionary behind Xero Shoes. They were featured on Shark Tank. He'll tell you all about that and turning down an offer from them. He is a brilliant entrepreneur, brilliant marketer. He was actually a magician and a stand-up comic as well. And he'll talk about how all that plays a role in business. A great conversation around entrepreneurship, around business. You're not going to want to miss this one. Check it out. Steven, absolute pleasure. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Look, for the listeners who don't know about you, you're a serial entrepreneur before you started Xero Shoes. Why don't you talk to us a bit about your entrepreneurial journey, a bit about your background and how you came up with the concept?
Well, first, I'm insulted that you think there's anyone on the planet who doesn't know me. So at this point, it's actually funny.
Well, after this podcast, we'll fix that. I promise you.
Well, I'm known in certain weird circles. So I'm a competitive sprinter. If I go to a high school track meet, because they'll have automated timing and they'll let older guys run, there'll be one group of people who knows me from Shark Tank, one group of people who knows me from Xero Shoes, and one group of people who knows me from YouTube. And they're in separate parts of the track. And invariably, it's always very entertaining. So to answer your question, I've never had what's it called? A job? Is that the word?
I think so. Me too. But I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it.
Job. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had a flashback. The first thing I started doing for money, my dad, who was a bit of a shoe whore, he would pay me 25 cents for polishing his shoes and 50 cents for polishing his boots. And it was amazing how often those shoes and boots needed polishing. And so that was part number one. Then when I was maybe 13, before that, I got really into magic. And when I was about 13, I started doing kids' birthday parties. And that turned into a career street performing. That turned into doing stand-up comedy. This is going to sound really crazy. That turned into developing the industry standard word processing software for television writers. There's a bit of a gap in between those things. I ended up doing some real estate investing. I was teaching meditation around the world. I hosted an internationally syndicated cable show. I taught internet marketing. I've been an internet marketer since like 1992, mostly inspired by the software company. I know I'm forgetting things. And then, was doing a bunch of real estate investing, which my wife, Lane, and I thought was going to be our retirement plan. And then in 2006, we predicted the crash and started selling everything. And then in 2009, accidentally really started Xero Shoes. And that's the abbreviated version.
So how'd you come? I mean, actually, before we go there, there's so many different ways we could take that.
Well, let's start with all of that was because I'm too old to have gotten Ritalin.
One of the things that we have in common a little bit is I love magic, right? And
really,
yeah, I used to go to. So here's what I didn't like about it. I was fascinated by. I grew up watching David Copperfield, loved it. And then I used to go to the magic store to buy all these different magic tricks and learn how to do all those things.
Hold on, which one? Where were you living?
I'm in Canada.
Okay, so which store?
There was one in Montreal. I forget what it's called. But yeah, they sold all the tricks there. And what I realized is it was a pain in the ass to do a lot of these tricks, right? Like I'm like, okay, how do I make a ring disappear and appear on my shoelace? Oh no, I got to take my pants to the tailor. I got to do a lot of those things. And it was almost like once you learn the trick, it kind of ruins magic a little bit. Did you find that? Totally. Did you find that for you as you were performing? Like you fell in love with magic, but as you start doing the tricks, did you fall out of love with it a little bit?
It was yes and no. What I fell out of love with was the conceit of it. So for example, if I'm going to make a coin vanish, why do I have to start it in one hand and then toss it to the other hand? That's just a conceit. And I get that part of the job is to get people to follow along with the conceit. But this is going to sound really weird. If I think about all my different careers, oh Christ, I totally forgot. I was a stand-up comic for 10 years. That was one of my jobs. What I kept doing was trying to get rid of the conceits. I tried to keep making things simpler. That's kind of been a through line. And so when I couldn't find ways of doing effects that were utterly simple. That was frustrating. But the one that was more interesting to me was I was mostly a sleight of hand guy. Or, I mean, I did a lot of things, but that was a big chunk of what I was really interested in. And I came up with a bunch of moves. But the whole idea with sleight of hand is you're trying to make it look like you're not doing anything. So again, there's the conceit part. But the other part about doing that is the best compliment you could get is when someone thinks you're using a trick deck, a fake coin, a something. And most magicians can't tolerate that gap between the fact that they've worked so hard and they're not
Yep.
getting credit for having worked so hard. So they either telegraph or they just make the audience feel like a bunch of assholes. And so to do magic as real entertainment and really hide the effect is an interesting thing. In fact, one of the things that I got well known for in my little weird circle, I worked at a magic shop. It's actually it's one of two kind of jobs that I've had. They let me do whatever I wanted. But what I was known for was magicians would come in who were famous for certain tricks, and I would be asked to do a trick for that magician. It was their trick, but I was doing it my way, and they often didn't know until it was too late. And by too late, I mean a lot of these tricks involve things like getting a $100 bill stuck to a 20-foot ceiling. And they didn't know it was happening until it was like, wait a minute. And then there was their $100 bill stuck on the ceiling. So I did that. You know Tana's Magic Shop in New York? Did you ever
No,
go there?
no.
Oh, you're way too young for it. Back in the day, that was like the biggest shop in the world. And I came in and I was 15. I showed them this trick that I'd come up with. And then the most famous magician in the world, again, Harry Lorraine at that time, came in and they said, hey, show him that trick. And I pretended that I didn't know who he was. And it was like a really basic looking trick, except at the end, completely fooled him. And if I can, well, I'm going to say it. After I fooled him with this trick, he just leans in and he goes, hey, kid, come here. And he whispers in my ear, fuck you. and then we all just cracked up. So anyway, so very interesting to hear. I mean, but are there still things about it that you find interesting or applicable or?
Yeah, I mean, when I watch magicians do things and I can't figure out how they did it,
Yeah.
that I'm always fascinated about. Like I just love magic and I love the idea of it. But what I find really interesting is the similarity between that and entrepreneurship.
Totally.
But one of the ways I want to take it, I'm curious if you see this too, is everyone thinks you learn a magic trick. Like, how do you make something disappear? Oh, I'm going to buy this trick in the store and they're going to give me the instructions that literally I can say magic words and they disappear.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that, no, it doesn't actually disappear. There's
Yeah.
work to be done. You got to practice. You got to go in front of the mirror. You got to do it a bunch of times. And I find entrepreneurship's kind of like that. Oh, cool.
But
I could go start a business. And I launched my store. I should be making $1 million.
well, no,
Do you
you left
find
out
those
this,
similarities?
you left out this part. Everybody thinks there's a secret.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I think the entire how to succeed in business section of a bookstore should be burned because it's just completely ludicrous. Everyone thinks there's a simple path and you follow the instructions to coin vanishes. You follow the instructions, you're a millionaire. And that's just not the way it is at all. But there are so many people who have sold so many billions of dollars of books and courses, convincing people of that they believe it. And that's in part because how do I want to say this? So one of the things about magic is that it works when you understand the human mind, because basically you're looking at how minds work normally and you're trying to inject a little something that messes with that without people noticing. Well, when it comes to business or happiness in general, success in business or happiness in general, it's the same basic idea that I guess the best way I can say it is thinking of Daniel Gilbert from Harvard, who wrote a book called Stumbling on Happiness. He also did a TED talk about it, and I'll summarize it. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version in about a minute. Almost everything we're doing is trying to predict what will make us happy in the future or how to avoid being unhappy in the future. We are horrible at doing this. We're even worse at remembering how bad we are at doing this. And then we just think we're special, because if we met 1 million people who got the thing that we thought would make us happy, 1 million people who'd done the thing that we thought would lead to success and found out that it didn't lead to success or didn't make them happy, we'd still go, yeah, but if I got it, I know that all those people who won the lottery aren't happier with the lottery winnings, but if I won the lottery, if I had a business that exited for X number of dollars, and this is the part that I find so, not quite comical, in a way sad, but also just annoying because of the misleadingness of people trying to sell this story, is that, as you know, 99% of it is just you wake up in the morning, you try to figure out what fire started overnight, despite the fact that nothing changed. And hopefully that extra 1% is smart enough to know what to do about it or figure out what to do about it.
And it's also showing up doing the same thing over and over, like a
Oh,
magician,
totally.
right? Like it's repeating the same thing over and still staying passionate, still staying motivated, still. I'm curious, you're a stand-up comic and a magician. What do you think
Yeah.
prepared you more in the
Stand up.
business world?
That's a good question. For me, they were kind of related in that with magic, what you're doing is often more directly putting yourself in a situation where unusual things can happen because you're dealing directly with an audience, especially doing close up. You got someone, right in front of your face. And so the interaction is very important, figuring out how to manage that, how to not freak out under pressure, how to address when things go wrong. Stand up is a variation of that. And it's a little more refined in certain ways. I would argue that both of those were relevant along with almost every other aspect of my life that I can think of. For both my wife and I, this is really the perfect storm. It's combined everything we've ever done or been interested in or good at into one thing. So arguably, I guess if we're going to extrapolate that into the business book, that we're going to have the one book left on that section of the bookstore, it would be, most likely
The one book no one should burn, right? This is the one book everyone's
one book everyone should own, no one should burn.
There you go.
It is really about maximizing what you're good at and not necessarily ignoring the rest, but finding other people who can fill in the rest, but really paying attention to the part that you're good at. Now, granted, there'll be things that you're good at that you hate doing. We all seem to have one of those. And I guess the second chapter of the book is when you have the cash to hire the person who can do that thing that you're great at but hate doing, that's a good suggestion as well. But I'm having a flashback to calling a friend of mine who's a serial CEO and saying to him, this is maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I said, I don't really feel like, quote, CEO material. And he says, oh, no, you don't understand. There's different kinds of CEOs. There's operational CEOs, there's financial CEOs, there's legal CEOs, there's product marketing CEOs. You're that one. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. And arguably my wife is sort of the financial operations CEO, even though she doesn't have the title, because she's one of the jobs of a CEO, of course, is to be the face of the company often. And that's just not her interest. So happily, I'm married to someone. She's got the operation finance piece and I've got the product marketing piece. And that's how this all started.
Sorry.
And let's not leave out the critical thing that points to is the unbelievable role of luck, which is left out of the equation as well. I think, I half jokingly say 90% of what we've been able to do is due to luck, and the other 10% is also due to luck.
Well said. But look, I think there's luck, and then there's also, you still need a good product or service. I think a lot of people ignore that aspect, right? They don't know how to construct a good sales offer. They just think, I'm going to put money on Facebook. I'm going to put money on YouTube. I'm going to put money on Google, and that's going to grow my business for me. And they ignore, the most important part.
I would argue that it's actually one step before that, because I meet so many entrepreneurs, especially since we've been on Shark Tank and people call us or talk to us because they want to be on Shark Tank and they think they have a product. They think they have a service. They think they have something valuable. I say, have you gotten money from strangers to prove it yet? And
not friends and family who told you they love the idea. You want to buy one? No, but I love the idea.
Yeah. So the step one is not the product, because we all get in love with our products. Step one is, and maybe they're not linear like that, but they kind of go hand in hand. But until you can demonstrate that there are people who have proven that they want what you have, and there's a way to find them en masse, until you do that, you've got nothing.
I totally agree. So talk to me. I want to talk Shark Tank in a second, because I think there's a lot to learn from the lessons of someone who's been on there. How'd you come up with the concept of Xero Shoes?
I didn't come up with it. What we're doing is basically what human beings were doing for the first 99.95% of human history, where footwear is something to protect your foot and something to hold that onto your foot. I mean, that's fundamentally, the key to what we're doing is letting bodies do what's natural by doing what humans have been doing for most of human history. But to be slightly more specific in this situation, what happened that allowed us to get into that world is 14 years ago, I was 45. I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break, was getting injured continually for about 2 years. And a friend of mine who's a world champion runner said, why don't you try running barefoot and see if you learn anything from doing that? To make it short, what I learned was why I was getting injured. It was a form problem, and how to stop getting injured, which is a form solution. Because basically, when you're running barefoot, doing it wrong hurts and doing it right feels great. And so I wanted that barefoot, that natural movement experience as much as I could have it, but I didn't want to have to argue about getting into restaurants or stores or whatnot. And I knew about the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico who run in scraps of tires strapped to their feet with a strap of leather. And so I made my version of that sandal just as a hobby. I made a pair for me, for my wife. She sort of patted me on the head. She didn't know what that was all about. For a couple of other local runners. Then it was a shampoo commercial. They told two friends and they told two friends. And finally, one of the people said, I have a book coming out on barefoot running. And if you treated this hobby of yours like a business and had a website, I could put you in the book. And as I mentioned, I've been an internet marketer for a long time. So I rush home. I pitch this incredible opportunity to my wife, who assures me I have my head firmly up my butt and that I shouldn't do it. It's a waste of time, won't make any money. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. So I waited till she went to bed before I built a website. And we thought it would be a car payment. We thought we'd make a couple $100 a month. But within 6 weeks, it was clear that this was going to be our full-time job. And we didn't know how big it would get. We didn't know the implications of what we were doing at that moment, but it became very clear very quickly.
So your wife, who's
Yes.
a business savvy person,
Yes.
thought the idea was horrible.
Horrible.
Did it make you doubt yourself at all? I know you joked that you waited until you went to bed, but did you doubt the idea at all? And then how did you get her to come around?
Yeah, it wasn't a question of doubting or not, because I didn't really, because again, in my mind, it was just a guy said, put up a website and I'll put you in a book. That's as far as I got. Literally, it was like website or book, website, car payment was about as far as the thinking went. So the risk was about zero. I mean, I literally built a website in about an hour. And so why not? And I had done that innumerable times before, where I had an idea, put up a site or did something just to see if it would work. So that was the easy part. The getting her on board was partly organic, just seeing that from day one, people responded to what we were doing. And granted, some of that was because of the marketing I was doing, but nonetheless, people were responding. But I think the pivotal moment, in fact, I know the pivotal moment was we had three guys who had been in the footwear business for 35 years, who we had met socially, frankly. They came to our house, they sat around our dining room table, I'm sorry, for tax purposes, conference room table, and they talked to us about how to run this business and how to make this work. And they said, now keep in mind, we were selling at that time a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. Couldn't have been funkier, more hippie-like, a little weirder, but they still said, we believe in you guys and we believe in what you're doing. Natural movement is the most important thing. And this is a great way to provide it. Now we had other business model they thought was cool too, that we can get into in a second. But suffice it to say, the next line they said is, we would do this with you because we believe in you and what you're doing, but we're not dumb enough to try to start a shoe company. We've been in the business too long. We know how stupid that is. And Lane and I both said, yeah, we know we're hyper optimistic and naive, but that's the only way anything ever gets done. And so after meeting with those guys and that whole weekend that we spent together, she literally walked into the kitchen and with the appropriate hand gesture said, I'm all in. And I think it was also partly the organic part is realizing that as we saw this happening, she knew that she was going to have to come in to handle the financial part and the operations part, because I would leave both of those to the last possible minute if I had to, or if I could. And that's of course not the right way to run a business. So she saw the necessity of her jumping in with her skills as well.
Yeah, one of the things you said there I love is, and we were talking offline that I told you I know Damien, he was a mentor of mine. One of the first things he said to me when I told him I want to join the clothing industry and I want to take on Under Armour, Nike, that was my first idea. Yeah. He's like, do you have $200 million? I said, no. He goes, what's your next idea? Right. And I said, okay. So I told him, I said, look, maybe I'm naive and dumb enough to think I could do it. And he looked at me and he said, don't ever lose that feeling. Yeah. He goes, because what happens is you're passionate and you're going to get no after no after no after no, but it's the ones that could hold on to that feeling, right? And still push through. What's your advice to the entrepreneurs right now listening who think they have the idea? You went into a very competitive space, naive, excited, and then got hit with rejections. How do you hold on to that feeling?
I got to tell you, we never got hit with rejection. We've been hit with obstacles in the way. So, but we've never been hit with rejection from.
So let's use obstacles. I mean, regardless, there's bumps in the road. Nothing ever goes smoothly. So how do you hold on to that feeling?
Well, I didn't have to. This is going to be weird, but let me address this though. The difference between an obstacle and a no is, look, I used to make a living as an actor, and I got a lot of no's then. That was a direct no. I also got a lot of yeses that turned into no's, and yeses that turned into yeses, and no's that turned into yeses. But the obstacles are things like this. In 2009, in early 2010, when we got this started, the whole idea of barefoot running was taking off like there was no tomorrow. And we were just riding on that wave. The big shoe companies were simultaneously saying if you ran barefoot, you'd get Ebola, you'd step on hypodermic needles, your kids wouldn't get into college, you would forget how to drive a car. I mean, they were just making crap up. It was ridiculous. By 2000, the end of 2010, they were coming out with products that they claimed gave the same benefits, but actually didn't. So there's still in America, not in Europe, there's still a wave of people who believe that what we're doing about natural movement with actual footwear isn't good, isn't valid, is problematic because of the hundreds of millions of dollars that the big shoe companies spent to save their asses, frankly. And so that's an obstacle. Or here's an obstacle where our original business plan with our do-it-yourself kits was we were going to give away 3D scanning kiosks and let people, have these wherever they wanted. Customers would come stand on the kiosk, get a foot scan. It would get sent to us. We'd have a CNC machine, a computer controlled cutting machine, make a sandal for them. We'd FedEx it to them and get it the next day. Brilliant business plan. Oh, and the people who had the kiosk, they'd be affiliates. So there was no cost for them. We'd give them the kiosk. They made money for everyone who stepped on it, essentially. Well, then we found out kiosks cost $20,000 each. So that wasn't a no. It was just like a whoops kind of obstacle. Or let's just talk about simple things. The trade war 2 years ago, that was an obstacle. The pandemic started out as an obstacle. The current supply chain issues, total obstacle. So but to answer your question, the thing that has kept us going goes back to one of the first things you said. And I'll do it by quoting my wife. Her line is, there's enough shoe companies in the world. There's no need to have another, unless your shoes change people's lives. And letting your body do what's natural, letting your feet bend and flex and move, and having your soles feel things so your brain knows how to move your body. That's why we get we now have tens of thousands, but every day we get letters, literal letters, and emails and phone calls and reviews from people talking about how what we're doing changed their lives. And that's what keeps us going. What keeps us going is knowing that the big shoe companies have been knowingly lying to people for 50 years. They know, I mean, we've had people say it straight to our face and straight to the faces of friends of ours. They know that what they're doing does not provide improvements in performance or reductions in injuries. They've said they can't change to what we're doing, which they've admitted is legitimate because, and I'm quoting them, if we did, it would be admitting that everything we've said for 50 years is a lie, which it is. And I find it morally repugnant when people make money by lying to other people. And so the combination of changing people's lives and the morally bankrupt system that we're in gets me out of bed in the morning for two different reasons. One is the excitement of helping people, and the other is I want to pull the rug out from underneath this thing that is demonstrably not good. And when I say that, I'll do the shortest version of this. Nike came out with a study a little over a year and a half ago where they compared their best-selling motion-controlled running shoe to a new shoe they said was, quote, designed to reduce injury, as if any shoe was ever designed to increase injury. We'll leave that alone. And they published the study, which they said was independent, despite the fact that they designed it and they paid for it. Again, we'll leave that alone. They said the new shoe reduced injury by 50%, 52% actually, which is technically true until you look at the numbers where things get more interesting. Their best-selling shoe in a 12-week study injured over 30% of the people. The new shoe only injured 15%. So this is like, let's call 15 is 1 out of 7. Let's call that 30-ish 2 out of 7, just to round it off. So this is like me asking you, which restaurant do you want me to take you to every night this week? The one where you get food poisoning twice, or the one where you get it once? It's ridiculous. That study should have made people go, are you kidding me? The best case scenario is 1 out of 7 people got injured within 12 weeks. It should have been an international uproar. But instead it was all published as new shoe reduces injury. So I find things like that. Those get me out of bed because I'm not okay with that.
So do you have a fundamental issue with marketing and, let's say, even the media today? Because the media does things like that too,
absolutely.
Right? With their headlines.
Absolutely. Well, look, the fact that the internet is powered by clickbait is problematic. And well, there's a lot of things we could go into that. So yeah, I do. I find that misleading people. It goes back to the Daniel Gilbert thing. People want to be happy. You tell them that you can make them happy, they're going to jump on board what you're doing. And if you have something that can actually help them, that's great. But if you're just selling the same old thing repackaged or something that doesn't actually work, then I think that's problematic. I have a friend who helped start a nutritional supplement company. And unfortunately, they're not making enough money to buy him out. But he basically stepped away when he realized that 99.5% of the things they were selling don't do anything. There's two things that do. And if he could just sell those, he'd be happy. But you can't run a business just selling those two things, according to him.
I want to take a step back for a second. The book that your friend wrote, that you launched the website for, if there was no book, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
Same thing. Honestly, the book made zero difference. It actually, the book coming out made no difference. If he didn't give
No,
me the,
asking you to build
yes.
a book, would you have built a website? Where would you be right now?
It's it's a good question. We had been in retired mode from 2000 to 2009 from the real estate stuff that we were doing. And then what I had done at that time, I had developed this really unusual meditation course. I'd been interested in meditation since I was about 8, and I'd come up with these really weird techniques that work very quickly, very easily. And we were actually planning on really promoting that because of the response that we were getting. And so Xero Shoes happened literally just on the cusp of us taking the meditation course and trying to go bigger with that. And I'm thrilled that that didn't happen, because when you are teaching meditation, people think that you're magical and special, which is really annoying, and which is a variation of not liking people lying to make money. And the other thing about it is there's some people who come to meditation or any personal development thing, or what they think is personal development, and they actually have an identity of being someone who's broken and needs help. And if you show them that they can get past that, that breaks apart their identity, and they're not interested in that. They want to be the person who is broken and needs help. And when you give them another way, the only 3 choices they seem to have is find a way to stand up, fall down, or as they're falling, grab you and take you with them. And I'm not messianic. I thought I came up with some really interesting techniques. I didn't think that it would change the world or that anyone needed to do them. And so I couldn't justify a way of dealing with the negative consequences of being in that world. So again, it was like a perfect timing thing of realizing that was not going to be satisfying for me for various reasons. And then Xero Shoes coming along. So I have to tell you, we had a couple of months worth of money left in the bank when all of this happened, because the real estate stuff had stopped, et cetera. And I said to Lena, the problem is we have a couple months worth of money in the bank. If we had a couple of days worth, I'd think of something to do. Human beings are like that. When your back's up against the wall, when you're backed into a corner, that's when things happen. And I'm very much like that. I don't try. When the going gets tough is when ideas pop into my head.
Talk to me about working with your wife. How do you balance that dynamic of, like, when work's over, or if you disagree on things, to now separate that and go home and put that behind you?
Well, I think that's so cute. We think we ever don't do it. I mean, we're individually working, 80-hour weeks sometimes. And so there is no separate home life per se. That's not really true. We have an unofficial, but seems to be mostly official policy that we don't talk about work when we're in the bedroom or master bathroom, although we violate that on a regular basis, but we never get into a big conversation there. At the end of the day, I make dinner, and then most of the time, and then we sit in front of the TV and turn off our brain, and and cuddle up on the couch, and that's dreamy. Working with Lena has been the most satisfying thing in my life, and I'm going to get teary just thinking about it. I literally can't even conceive of. I couldn't have conceived of the amount of satisfaction that I get from doing it. She's a brilliant woman whom I love dearly, and we know that we have our own swim lanes, and we know that we're really good in those lanes, and we respect each other. And I also know, and this is true both for our business and frankly our personal life, if she says no, then that's the right answer. If she says, here's something that you're doing that's out of whack, or you're being a bit of an ass, I know she's right. We know our patterns, our relationship patterns, well enough that it comes in handy for when we're stressed out because of something that happened at work. And we don't have, our disagreements are just business process things. It's like, do we have the money to bring in this shoe that I want to design? Can we, what's it going to take to do this marketing initiative? How do we make a decision about when something goes wrong? And, everyone's got different opinions. So that's not a problem. There's nothing that we have to clear up. We're just trying to figure out the business stuff together. We're on the same page. We're trying to make the same thing happen. But she likes to say that I have the easy job where I get to think of all the cool things that are going to work and how well it's going to go or what it's going to be like when that happens. And her job was to tell me that we didn't have the money or the resources to do it, or for some other reason it wasn't possible. And I know that my job, after she does her job, is to get over being disappointed as quickly as humanly possible, because she's right. She's the one who's got the checkbook. And I agree with, well, let me say it differently. While I don't agree with her financial philosophy per se, I know that it's effective and helpful. And there's no reason for me to argue other than that I have the fantasy that my idea might be better, but it's a fantasy because it's just the imagined future. And so I have no interest in trying to, fight with that. Her way is a valid way of seeing the world and moving forward. Let's go there. And if we find a problem, one of those obstacles, then we take a detour.
Do you ever look at the success of the company right now and look at her and be like, told you so?
No, I look at her and I could not be more grateful. It's not I told you so, because again, there's some things I can say publicly, some things I can't, because we did an equity crowdfunding raise. So anything I say publicly, we have to have already told the SEC. So last year, 2020, we did about 23.1 million in sales. I never say I told you so, because we thought that maybe this business would be a bit of a car payment. We thought that maybe if we were good with our do-it-yourself sandal biz, we'd get to maybe 2 or 3 million in sales and somebody would buy us for $5 million. We never thought we'd have 57 employees, money from a private equity firm that's actually helping us and not trying to just extract value from us, the talent that we have here. I don't think there's one piece of what's going on now that we ever imagined in the first couple of years of doing this business. And so there's nothing for me to say, I told you so. In fact, I often apologize because this idea has become so much bigger and so all encompassing that it's, when we were in retired mode, life was really easy. And now we're both working harder than we ever imagined. And sometimes I see the effect that has on her, because her job, what Lena's really good at, and this sounds weird, is thinking of every possible thing that could go wrong. That's a horrible skill to have. It's a necessary skill to have, but it does not make for a comforting mind. And I sometimes feel guilty that I got her into it.
Talk to me about Shark Tank, the experience on it. How was it walking in? Were you nervous?
So excited. In fact, I don't know if you can see it, but as soon as the doors open and we're walking down the hall into the tank, I'm practically sprinting, and Lena's like, whoa, slow down, big man. So I couldn't have been more excited to get in there, because I really, this is the answer to your previous question about magic or stand-up comedy. As a former comic, I love high pressure situations like that. I do zero preparation. I did much more for Shark Tank, but I basically walk in so curious to see what's going to happen and so excited to see what my brain is going to come up with in response. So I was just giddy. And walking out was the exact opposite. Walking out, wasn't upset, but it was like, wow, that is not what I expected. Because we had read the autobiographies of all the sharks, and we thought we knew how it was going to play out to a certain extent. And it was the exact opposite of what we imagined. So it was super entertaining. And then, of course, you realize I have a master's degree in film. I know how editing works. So the moment we got out of there, it's like, wow, they could make us look like complete idiots if they want to. If they cut it together just right, even though we did a really good job, they could extract just the parts that they want to make us look like complete morons. And in fact, we mentioned that to our producers, and they said, oh, no, we don't do that. We try to make everyone look as good as possible. This is a Disney-owned network. We want people to want to be on the show. If you see someone who bit it, they probably did way worse in real life.
Wow.
We tried to make them look as good as possible. And we found that was true in two weird ways. One is a friend of ours taped the show around the same time we did. And she was so upset about how she did on the show that it almost caused a breakup of her marriage. I mean, she was really, really upset. But then when it aired, looked pretty good. She's a smart, funny, attractive woman. And there was a couple of things that were a little wonky, but that was good television. But, it came out looking pretty good. The flip side is I have a friend who looked like a complete ass on the show. And he always likes to say he just got a horrible edit. And I say, you're a friend of mine, so I can say this to you. You got a really good edit. And, so it was, I loved it. At the time, what people don't understand is it looks like a conversation when you see it edited, but it's edited. It's not happening in real time. And it's cut down from some larger amount of time to some smaller amount of time. And what happens is, like, one of the sharks asks you 5 questions, and while you're answering number 3, another one asks you 10 questions. And if you switch, the first one gets mad. And if you don't switch, the second one gets mad. And they're also rarely paying attention to you. They have so much that where they're making notes and trying to figure things out, or come up with a one-liner that's funnier than the person sitting next to them. I mean, they're often just not checked in a way that seems like they're just laser focused on the show. So there's moments of that, but it's not what you think. And they're always, the biggest thing they're trying to do, in addition to promote themselves, because it is called Shark Tank, not Stephen and Lana Tank. The biggest thing they're trying to do is go, gotcha. It's just find somewhere where they can just go, And we never gave them one of those. Every time they thought they had one, our answer was so simple that they were just sort of depressed. And by the way, if you haven't seen the episode, you can go to xeroshoes.com/Shark Tank. Every objection they had that in this show makes it look like we're like, what? In real life, we hit out of the park so far that at one point, Robert just jumps up and just yells, why do you have a perfect answer to every question? And Lana and I just looked at him kind of incredulously. We said, it's our business.
So, but that's an important thing, because look, through my line of work, I've worked and consulted with hundreds of businesses. I've audited probably thousands more. I think Shark Tank, what it does a great job at is, I think the biggest thing people go on, the biggest mistake from a viewer standpoint is they don't know their numbers. The biggest mistake that I see from entrepreneurs I work with and audit is they actually don't know their numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I find that so fascinating, like how business owners cannot know the numbers of their business.
I know, it really is incredible. And there's certain numbers that you need to know. I mean, so again, I've been a marketer for a very long time. I've taught my other marketing partners, the people that I work with, who are very good marketers. I've taught them things about managing information that they never thought of, because there's certain numbers that I know I need to see that most people don't know. Here's a weird version of that. When we were talking to private equity companies, they would often say to me, well, what's your customer acquisition cost? Seems like an important number to know. And I would say, has anybody ever given you a numerical answer to that question? And they would say, well, yeah. I said, oh, so is it okay if I lie to you the same way they did? And they're like, what? I go, well, that's a number that you can't really know in this kind of business, because what happens if I run a Facebook ad, someone clicks on that ad, I paid for that. They come to my website, they opt into my email list. I'm sending them email and SMS. I pay for that. Then they actually go and buy on Amazon, where I get no data. How do I know? I just spent a bunch of money, but I don't ever even see the end result of that. So what I can tell you is that we're profitable.
And I love you. I love this. This is so perfect. This is great. Cause I mean, this is literally the conversation I have with businesses every single day.
Yeah. I mean, so you need to know the numbers that you need to figure out, the numbers that you need to know, and then you need to stay on them. So in fact, during COVID, our bankers, when we were taking this to market, and our private equity company that we worked with, were panicked. They're like, what are you going to do with your marketing budget? I said, I don't have a marketing budget. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, we spend money based on getting a positive return on our ad spend. And they said, what's the return on ad spend you want? I said, well, that depends. Is this people who don't know us? Is it people who do know us? Are they existing customers? So I have different requirements for different platforms and different levels. But the bottom line is, if we don't get the return on ad spend that we want, and it's actually the return on investment, because it's ad spend plus the cost of working with the people that I'm working with. If I don't get the numbers that I want, we spend less money. If I get the numbers we want, we spend more till it stops giving me the return on investment that I want. And so I'm monitoring this every day. And they just couldn't wrap their brain around that. Well, like, but what's your budget? I go, I don't have a budget.
If I'm positive, I will spend more.
Right. And
Yeah.
if not, we'll try to figure out why and see what we can do about it while we pull back to make sure that we are profitable. We've been a bootstrap company until we took on that private equity money. We had to, and we were growing so fast, we had to make money every day because otherwise we wouldn't have money for inventory for next year.
Love it. Talk to me about the importance of building a brand for you.
Oh, wow. It's on the one hand, it's everything. On the other hand, it can be nothing. It really depends on your business, frankly. I mean, if you're in a real transactional, like info product business where you're trying to sell a colon cleansing product or something, no one cares. You know, they want to get your thing and they're done with you most likely. Building a brand, building something that people want to be associated with, that's a whole other game. And all I can say is it's evolving for me now because it changes the way you do it, the importance of it, and how you do the way and how that's the same. And the resources that you have available to do that change as the company evolves. And so, and there's decisions you need to make along the way, which is how much are you attaching yourself, your brand to a particular type of person, or is the brand just going to be represented by other people? Like Nike, for example, is really represented by their brand ambassadors, by Jordan and all the people they get involved. People aren't really attached to Nike as much as they're attached to Nike through those other people. So you have to decide, are there other people involved, or is it you? And now in our example, just to take this little tangent, I never wanted to be the face of the brand because I wanted the brand to exist independently. So in case we ever sold things, it was a clean transition where there was nothing sort of in the way. But I discovered very quickly, I was making videos about how to use our products. Basically, I made videos how to take our entire business and do it yourself. It's like, here's how to make your own shoes. By the way, we are the ones who have the materials at a better price and they're better materials. That was kind of my pitch, basically. So I had a video that had my face for a second saying, you know, I'm going to show you how to make some sandals. And then it's 10 minutes of looking at my feet. And yet I started discovering that people were recognizing me and commenting to me personally. And I know that humans like to deal with other humans. So very quickly, we realized that we were going to be, make it look like our brand was kind of mom and pop-ish. It's a bit deceptive. We have people who are in the industry who say to us, what'd you guys do last year? Like 5 million, 6 million? It's like, no, 23. And they're like, I'm sorry, what? I said, yeah, our mom and pop image sort of belies the truth of what's going on behind the scenes.
I feel like it helps.
Yeah, it totally helps. But the balance there is to have a mom and pop image where people take us seriously. So that's the thing that we're balancing. And then the other part, incredibly satisfying thing happened to me a few weeks ago. I'm having brunch with some friends and somebody walks by in a pair of our sandals. And I make a comment about that to my friends who then yell at the guy, hey, come here. And they asked him about his shoes. And he just went on for like 20 minutes about how much he loved them. And he had no idea who I was. And I thought that was awesome because at a certain point, it has to get bigger than you, even if you are the face of the brand, et cetera. So being clear about who you are and who you're talking to and what you represent is important. But I'm saying that to separate from branding, which is spending money so that people understand the brand and not being able to track and see what the effect of that is on your sales. And I call branding marketing for people who don't have the balls for tracking. And whenever someone says it's all about, my favorite thing, when print magazine people say, well, you have to keep the ad running for God knows how long because people don't respond until they see something 7 plus or minus 2 times. I've concluded that 7 plus or minus 2 times thing was made up by some Madison Avenue guy in the 60s to sell more ad space, because I've proven repeatedly that that's not true. That we ran an ad in Backpacker magazine and got the biggest response in the first month, 50% of it the second month, 25% of it the third month, and it just went down, in part because that magazine, the subscriber base is very consistent. They don't lose a lot of subscribers. Conversely, I forgot to mention my previous company. I started a software company way back when too, back to the what'd you do job thing. Anyway, I had a software company. I ran an ad in Writer's Digest magazine for 5 years, unchanged, straight, and continued to work month after month because they had 100% subscriber turnover every year. So it still wasn't the 7-time thing. It was just they had so many new people every month that I was just getting that same, immediate 50-25 thing happening over and over and over. So I'm very curious to see how the brand, talking about ours, again, it evolves, and that's or at least it is for us. And that's a tricky thing. And it's evolving for us because we have more and more different kinds of products used by more and more different kinds of people for more and more different things. And how do we become something for everyone without trying to be something for everyone? If you know what I mean? Like you can't,
Yeah.
I joke, if I only had a product that sold to women named Rachel who went to yoga on Thursday afternoons, I could crush that. But we have so many things for so many people for so many reasons. How do you do that and still have a consistent thing, a consistent place for people to go that they want to be? And that's changing as we change.
So then talk to me. You're a tracking person, and I like that. I'm a numbers person, and I believe in tracking.
Yeah.
As the digital age keeps going, we're moving towards trackingless, cookieless webs. Facebook right now with Apple, we're seeing 30 to 40% loss of reporting, 50% loss of ROI, depending on
Yeah.
how you want to look at things. How is that changing your mind a little bit now, or now changing those numbers? Because now you went from hey, if we're return on ad spend's positive, we're going to spend
Yeah.
more. If our return on ad spend's negative, we're going to spend less.
Yeah.
But now we're moving towards, like, I almost think the last 5 years, if you're a digital marketer or you had a business that was all in on digital marketing, you were spoiled with the information you had and what you were able to do. And now I think we're getting back to marketing, like marketing fundamentals.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things is people forget that most humans get most of their information offline still.
Yep.
Most shopping is still not happening online. In footwear in particular, people would much rather go to a store and see a bunch of different brands and a bunch of different styles than try to do the shopping online. Even if you showed up with a van in front of their house and had an entire store in a car, they'd rather go somewhere and do it. So there's that component. We have not been hit as hard by what's been going on in the tracking as many other people, because where that, to get a little in the weeds about it, where that really is affecting you, especially on Facebook, is retargeting. And retargeting was a very profitable chunk of our business, but a moderate piece of the entire ad spend. So it definitely affected us, but it didn't hamstring us. The thing that people have to realize, and people forget this over and over and over, is that the way the internet seems to work is people give you things for free, and then they figure out if it works. And if it works, then they start charging you money for it. And so that's a problem. And then the platforms have their own way of doing things. So if you're like locked into one platform and they change something, you're screwed.
You're at their mercy.
Yeah. So, this is reminding me back in the day, this is quite a while ago, I was at an internet marketing workshop hosted by a friend of mine. And on the second day of the workshop, there was about 5 or 6 guys who looked like their entire family had just been murdered. Because what happened overnight was Google figured out how people were making money with AdSense arbitrage. Do you remember this, how this worked? For people who don't, you put up a website, you have AdSense ads that Google is providing, then you pay Google for AdWords. So you're paying for advertising to drive traffic to your website. Then if people click on the ads, then you're making money. And it was an arbitrage play. It cost you less to advertise than the money you made from the clicks. Well, Google figured this out, and they just banned from their search millions of web pages that were doing this. And so these 5 or 6 guys had been making $1 million a month until that morning. And suddenly they were making almost zero. And I have a longtime internet marketing friend who said to them, I told you, you can't build a business on someone else's back. And whether you're building the business on their back or advertising on their back, it's really the same thing. So you've got to always be prepared for the cost to go up or the opportunity to disappear. Look, I've been doing this long enough. SEO was easy. You hit a bunch of white keywords or text in white letter. Wait, Jesus, I can do it. Hide a bunch of white text behind a white background, and then just keyword stuff the crap out of it. And then you write a couple articles and you put them on a few article sites. I mean, it was that simple way back when.
Yep.
And it was simple again in 2009 because Google was still figuring things out. For the first 9 months of this business, if you did a search for any keyword I cared about, I was maybe 40 of the top 50 search results. And then they figured things out, and I went from 40 to 10 to 5 to 2 to 1. Now, that 1 is in the number 1 or number 2 position, but nonetheless, again, if you're building it on someone else's rules, they're going to change the rules.
Yep, I agree. Back to Shark Tank for a second. You rejected the deal, right? Like you declined a deal from Kevin.
Yeah.
talk to me about that, because that takes guts. People are on there
Yeah.
declining a deal. Talk to me about the moment doing that and then leaving the den knowing it was your call. No,
Yeah.
sorry, leaving the tank knowing it was your call. I'm Canadian, Dragon's Den.
Yeah,
I'm getting
Dragon's Den.
confused here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before, not only did we read their autobiographies, we watched every episode of Dragon's Den from Canada and the UK. We really wanted to get the lay of the land of the show. And to your point, it's amazing that people don't know their numbers walking in, when it's clear that if you watch the show, that's the most important thing. And the least important thing is saying, I'm passionate. Of course you are. We all are. We're stupid.
Or if I could get 1% of this billion-dollar industry.
Yeah. If I just, or if I just got you on board, those are the things. Like, no. That's not what the sharks are interested in. So part of our due diligence.
Just interrupt. I still remember when I asked Damon John, I'm like, can you invest? Like, can you help me take this? He goes, do you understand what investing is? Investing doesn't mean I go back to work. Investing is my money goes to work. So you're not hiring. You want to hire me? I'm going to take your business. I'm going to take your kids' business. I'm going to take everything from them, right? So in order for me to get my salary, but yeah.
On Shark Tank, they're not looking to be helpful. They're looking, frankly, looking for a good deal. They're looking for something that's undervalued. They're looking for something where they make money on the buy, not on the sell. They want to make money that if they invest in you today and they sell it tomorrow for the exact same valuation, they've somehow made money. And people don't keep that in mind. So part of our due diligence, we talked to bankers who were in the outdoor industry space and in footwear. We talked to people who bought shoe companies, who sold shoe companies, who, everyone who possibly had anything to do with the transaction in this industry. And we were getting valuations between roughly 2 million and 10 million. And we also knew that the sharks, get mad if you offer them too little, and are going to try and bargain. So they're going to end up, getting more than whatever you walk in for. So in Shark Tank, you have to do this weird thing of making both the ask and the offer. I'm going to offer you X% in exchange for Y%, which is not the way it works in the normal world. And so you have to do that math. Oh, and also there's a rule that you can't ask for less when you actually get, once you write on the contract, here's what my valuation is, or here's, what I'm asking and offering, you can get more money if they offer it.
You can't take less.
Right. You can't ask for less. And so putting all that together, we wanted to walk in with a number that we felt we could justify and say with a straight face, given everything that we knew, knowing that it was going to be negotiable in a big way. And so when Kevin, we walked in offering 8% of the company for $400,000, $5 million valuation, off of
double what everyone else was valuing you at.
Well, in the middle, actually. So again, we had valuations between 2 and 10.
Oh, sorry, 2 and 10. Yeah.
The people who valued growth, some of the private equity and venture capitalists we talked to, they were giving us 10. The people who were just in for, I'm going to pick something up and maybe the cash flow will pay for itself, they were coming in at 2, 2.5. So we figured, come in at 5, we're willing to go down to 2.5. So I offer 8%. Kevin says, how about 50%? I say no. He says, you're crazy. I say, maybe. I don't think so. He goes, you can make me another offer. I said 10. Actually, that's when he told me I was crazy. And we thought it was a good number. So in fact, it was such a non-starter, his offer, because we knew what yes and no was for us, that we literally forgot he made the offer. You don't see it on the show, but at one point, Robert turns to us and says, there's an offer on the table. And we were both like, wait, what? Oh, right. Oh, Kevin. Right. Which led to the only, not argument, the biggest disagreement I think I've ever had with my wife is I think she said something that she doesn't remember or thinks she said. So we go back to Kevin and we go, oh yeah, right. So Elena says, are you bringing anything to the table other than money? And he says, well, I'm a smart businessman. I've got a big Rolodex. And I remember her saying, so nothing.
Wow.
Which in this world is an appropriate response. Now, FYI, I adore Kevin. I adore all of them, really. But Kevin, I like because I think all of his bluster and bravado is there because A, it makes good television. And B, if you look at his life, he has been remarkably generous to people he believes who are valuable and who can help him achieve his goals. And I think a lot of what he's doing is just trying to put you to the test to see how are you going to react when we're in
it's qualifying you.
Totally. And when someone says something like, you're crazy, I'm not going to argue that. I think that too sometimes. It may be true. All entrepreneurs are to a certain extent, Or it may be that I just know things you don't know yet, but I'm not going to argue with you. I get why you would see that. In fact, that was sort of the secret, or it's one of the secrets to being effective on that show, is don't get defensive. And
Mhm.
I don't like telling people how to be. That's a hard, because people
Well,
can't.
going back to not knowing your numbers, the next biggest mistake is people are too emotional about their business.
Right. Well, it's also, and the too emotional is that they're going to get criticized and then they argue back. They feel like they've been personally attacked. I never feel like I'm being personally attacked in situations like that.
Yeah.
And because it's either A, not personal, or B, I agree. I just didn't want you to know it. Like you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I feel like that almost every day. And I just didn't want you to know it. And so I agree. What do you recommend? And in that case, people usually say, I got to tell you, when I was running $1 billion business, I woke up every morning worried people were going to figure out that I didn't know what I was talking about. I mean, these are common things that we all experience,
Yep.
but for some silly reason, we try to hide it from each other. So the way to become non-defensive is have people give you every criticism you could possibly find, or they could possibly find, and make sure you can comfortably find the truth of it for yourself, either now or in the past or metaphorically. So you can respond with something like, I think that too sometimes. What do you recommend?
So talk to me walking out. You said no. You look at your wife. You guys look at each other. What do you say?
Well, again, literally, as I'm walking out, I went, wow, that's not what I expected, in large part because the person we were most hoping to do a deal with was Barbara, because at the time she was the only one that was retired and she was working with all of her companies, and she's a brilliant marketer. And instead, what happened was the first thing Barbara said to me was, I hated you from the moment you walked out here. And you look like my ex-husband. You're a little shorter. Do you smoke a pipe? And then she goes after Lena. How can you be married to him? What's wrong with you that you're married to him? And she was like, blah, 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 what? So that was the part where if they cut that together, it could have made us look horrible. But I also found it kind of funny. In fact, the night the show aired, I tweeted, it's too bad you didn't invest, Barbara. I would have used some of that money for plastic surgery. So I was surprised more than anything else. I knew that Robert was or had been a runner. I thought he might be hip to what we were doing. My fantasy was that he would have seen some of the videos that I had on YouTube. I had a few that got a couple million views. I knew Damon, of course, knew the apparel and not footwear so much, but really knew the apparel space. And in fact, he was interested. He just kept saying, yeah, it's just too rich for me, which it was. Cuban had been promoting a Skechers shoe that was a minimalist shoe. So I knew he knew this space, and he was saying, well, it's just a bubble. I'm done. No, you misunderstood. And then of course, Barbara hated me. So Kevin was like the last person on our list because we knew he didn't know this industry, et cetera. And so I was just a little surprised more than anything else. And then from that moment on, it was kind of stressful because they tape more episodes or more segments than they air. So we didn't know if we were going to be on or not. We had no idea how it was going to be cut, when it was going to happen, if it was going to happen. They give you like 2 weeks notice and say, you're going to be on in 2 weeks. And even then, I know people who were told you're going to be on in 2 weeks. They were in the coming next week trailer, and then their episode or their segment didn't air. So that that kind of enigmatic living, that living in the bardo like that, was mildly stressful. And of course, we knew they weren't airing new episodes at the end of December, so we took a vacation. Thank you, frequent flyer points. And while we're in Ecuador visiting friends, we get the email, hey, you're going to be on in a couple of weeks. Like, yikes. So we're trying to do PR with bad internet connectivity in Ecuador, which was not the best thing. And again, we were the lead story when they put out the press release. It was something like I don't know, hippie couple from Boulder or something like that. And we're not hippies, but I get that we look at. And so we were the lead story, but we were the last segment that they aired. And we knew people, again, who'd been cut at the last minute. So up until we're on TV, we could not have been more anxious. And then our website blows up, 270,000 concurrent visitors with a site that was not built for that. And I was up 72 hours straight trying to keep things running or figure out a way to collect names or whatever we could do to salvage getting that huge of awareness.
I'll end with this. Something you talk about is conscious capitalism. Can you tell me what that is?
I have no idea. I'm
No?
serious. I have no idea. It's a phrase. No. It's a phrase that gets bandied about quite a bit, that I think people have different ideas of what it means, some of which I find just frankly silly. So for some people, it's that they want to make sure that their business is helping the world in some way. And some of those ways are rather transparent and kind of tacked on in a way that, like I'm doing this business so that we can support this one Eskimo who's trying to open up a video store or whatever it is. And, um, if there's a real reason to have a connection to things, that's cool. Lately, part of the conscious capitalism thing involves being green. The problem is most of the green things are really greenwashing. They're green on the outside, and that's it. For example, in our world, the quote green materials, the things that are most of the quote green materials, if you really dive in, they're not carbon positive or carbon negative, however we're going to say it. They're not using less carbon than the virgin options. For example, the time that it takes to take a boat out and bring all those bottles in and recycle the bottles and process those and turn them into something is not necessarily a carbon benefit. Let's refer to it that way. And I've spoken to the CEOs of many of these companies, and they've confessed exactly that. It's like, no, we're not carbon beneficial. So that's kind of annoying. Some of it is that people have the idea that that the way you have to run your business is that you're simultaneously running a self-help group, which is a whole other world. That you're responsible for people's psychological and emotional well-being. And I think that's true, but that's not conscious capitalism. That's just being a smart, honest business person and creating a place that people want to be, because why would you want to be somewhere where everyone around you doesn't want to be there? So I hear these things. I'll tell you, actually, the funniest one was this. Someone who was using that phrase invited me to a group that was a bunch of CEOs, and it was really just an excuse to get them into therapy. And business can have therapeutic components, but it's not therapy. You got to work out your stuff, ideally as quickly as you can, in a way that's not impacting your business. I say that all businesses rise to the level of the neuroses of their founders, and you have to hope that your neuroses are business positive. Like one of mine is that I treat everyone like I've known them my whole life, just because for whatever reason, that's the way my brain works. I can't code shift and be, professional. I just don't get it. Everyone here I think of as a friend of mine who I spend different amounts of time with in different situations. And that's good, but it also can be awkward for people who think that things should be professional, and they eventually get the hint, but that can take a little while. So my other, neurotic whatever is when something goes wrong, I'm going to be running down the hall screaming for 30 seconds before my brain settles down and I start figuring out solutions. That's just the way it is. I never scream at someone. I never call people names. I get mad at things that happen. Or things that are, problems, but not at people. So happily that weird, and then I forget them. So that weird bit of how my brain works seems to work okay. People like being here. They don't get mad if I'm running down the hall. They don't get mad if they give me an idea and I shoot it apart because it doesn't work for the following reason. We're all trying to do the same thing. So how do you define it? What have you heard as what that even means?
So, I mean, I've also heard it thrown around in terms of just making the world. If you're building the business, if you're gonna make sales, you're doing it in the hopes of also making the world a better place as well. Also,
Then I'm going to address that one. I think I'll say this in the most obnoxious way that I can. I have a certain kind of arrogance, but I don't have that one. And what I mean is, I don't feel like I have any way of knowing what will ultimately make the world a better place. There's things that I can do in my local environment. There's things that I can do that people find helpful, that people get benefit from. That's why we do what we do. Is that really improving the world? That's a huge thing. This goes back to the greenwashing thing. I was at a trade show, and the whole topic of sustainability came up. I was on a panel discussion in front of a couple hundred people, and these two other shoe companies were talking about how they're changing the world and saving the world because they're using sustainable materials. And I said, the United States alone puts 400,000, I think 400,000 tons of plastic waste into the water every year. You are making a couple hundred pounds. what impact do you think you're really having? I mean, get off your high horse. Let's look at reality. And so I think a lot of people, here's another phenomenon that I find very sad about human beings. There's this weird middle ground about how we want to help other people. If it's a large thing, tidal wave over somewhere that affected hundreds of thousands of people, we'll jump on board and try to be helpful. If it's an individual thing, that one little African child who's got a problem that we see on TV, we want to help. But that middle ground, we're not good at seeing that and taking action appropriately. And that's where the heavy lifting is. That's what needs to be done. So we're not, as humans, we're not wired to understand this very complex thing called the world well enough, is my opinion, for me to be able to get on the highest horse I could think of and say that we're making the world a better place. Now, paradoxically, with what we're doing, when people ask me my goal, I go to change the world, undeniably, because in this one little domain of having people have strong, happy, healthy feet that impacts the rest of their body, we're demonstrably making a difference. Beyond that, I don't know what that's going to turn into. Is that good? Is that bad? Maybe the kid who got into our shoes, had he not gotten into our shoes, would have come up with a way of figuring out nuclear fusion. I don't know. So I can't get that big because I know that I'm not seeing things clearly, and I don't have that level of arrogance.
Well, I'm going to lift you up, and I'm going to help you on that highest horse, and I'm going to give you that arrogance of that. Maybe someone listening here to this podcast heard you speak, you changed their life, and they go on and impact the world in a positive way. So we're going to change lives with this podcast.
Well, I'm okay with that, but I want to clarify the one thing. If that happens, it's because of that person. I mean, it's not my goal to try to.
Everything needs a catalyst. I'm going to give it to you.
Okay, I'm okay being a catalyst. I'm not okay trying to pretend that I'm in the catalyst business.
Fair enough. Steven, for the listeners who want to learn more, who want to reach out, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Xero Shoes, Xero-Shoes.com, or @/Xero Shoes, wherever you @/. And if your autocorrect changes the X to a Z, you'll probably get to us as well.
Perfect. Steven, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate you.
Total pleasure.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want, check out our most recent video over here. And this one is the one YouTube thinks you'll like. But if you really enjoyed watching, please do me a favor, like and subscribe over here. Thank you so much.